Hi, this is Tom from ZeroToFinals.com. In this video, I'm going to be going through a concept called the known-unknown matrix. And you can find written notes on this topic at ZeroToFinals.com/known-unknown matrix or on the Zero2Finals Patreon page at patreon.com/ZeroToFinals. So let's get straight into it. For my science and maths A-level exams, I worked out that pretty much everything I needed to know for those exams was contained within one study book. Also, the past papers of that exam contained all the questions that could possibly come up, and it seemed like year on year the same questions kept coming up. So basically, all I needed to do was learn that textbook and go through all the past papers multiple times, and I'd know what was going to come up on the exam. So then when the exam day rolled around, I was fully prepared and ended up scoring 100% on many of the exams I did for A-levels. I studied medicine at Manchester Medical School, which was a problem-based learning course. And basically what this meant was we had small group sessions where we discussed a case that the university had set, and then we were supposed to come up with intended learning objectives, or ILOs, which contained the information, or they prompted you to go and learn the information that would help you understand the case better. And this is how they gave you a syllabus. They gave you these cases, you were supposed to figure out what to learn, and then at the end of the semester, they gave you an exam which tested you on all of that content. And it could be really frustrating because sometimes you just felt that you didn't know what they wanted you to learn, and you didn't know what was going to come up on the exam. Part of the solution to this was to try and learn just the entire textbook or the relevant sections of a particular textbook. But even then I felt like I was stabbing in the dark. Often there was a lot of waffle in the textbook and you didn't really know which topics were important. So I often overlooked important topics and then I spent hours going down rabbit holes towards things that turned out to be not important. So it could be really frustrating. And this is a common frustration that I hear from medical students who tell me that why don't they just tell you what you're supposed to learn for your exams? Why don't they just give you all the information you're supposed to learn and then test you on that, and that would seem much fairer. And there's actually 3 reasons I can give you that I think this is why they don't do it that way. First of all, medicine is massive, it's open-ended and it's constantly changing. So it'd be almost impossible for the medical school to stay on top of everything, give you all the key information you need to know, and identify exactly what you're supposed to know as a medical student in preparation for being a doctor. So this would be a really difficult task for the medical schools in the first place. Secondly, the medical schools want you to become a self-directed learner. So they don't want to spoon feed you and hold your hand through the whole thing. They want to give you the skills so that you learn how to learn for yourself. So that when you become a doctor and you continue lifelong learning, you continue to expand your skill set despite somebody not still spoon feeding you the information. And thirdly, giving you all the information you need to know for your exams would make the exams too easy. And that would make it difficult to differentiate between students and figure out which students are struggling and which ones are doing really well. If you got into medical school, chances are you're pretty good at sitting exams. So if they gave everybody all the information that they needed to know for the exam, most people would score very highly. So it wouldn't be a very useful way of testing students. So we accept that medical schools can be a bit vague about what's coming up on their exams. So what can you do about it? Well, this is where the known-unknown matrix comes in. There are 4 boxes. The first box, or box 1, is the known knowns. The second box is the known unknowns. The third box is the unknown knowns. And the fourth box is the unknown unknowns. So let's start with box 1, the known knowns. And these are all the things that you're aware of, that you're good at and you know. Ideally, the day before your exams, as much content as possible falls into the known knowns box. And this makes it easy for you to sail through your exams because you know the content that you need to know. Box 2 is the known unknowns. And this is still a pretty safe box. This is where you want all the content to be before you start your revision period so that you know exactly what you need to know for your exams. If you know what you don't know and you've got all that information collected in one place, during your revision period, you can set out with multiple repetitions going through the same content, learning that information so that the day before your exams, all that information is entered into the known knowns box and you sail through your exams. Box 3 is the unknown knowns. And this is the content that you're actually quite good at, but you don't realize you're good at it. So for example, you might not realize that if a question on the anatomy of the heart came up, you'd actually have a good shot at answering that question correctly. The problem with this is it could end up being that you waste a lot of time revising things that you're already good at, whereas you should be allocating that time and energy to revising something you're bad at. So you want to know what you're good at in order to avoid spending too much time doing that and instead focus on your weaknesses. And finally, there's box 4, the unknown unknowns. And this is the most dangerous box of them all. This is the content that you don't even realize you need to know. So when you open your exam paper and you see that question and you think, I didn't even realize I was supposed to revise this. This seems ridiculous. That's because the content fits into box 4. It's an unknown unknowns. And this is dangerous not only in exams, but also in clinical practice, because you might think a patient has a certain condition because they fit into a box, and you don't even realize there's something that they have that you don't know about. So you want to avoid these unknown unknowns as much as possible. The other danger is you might think a topic fits into box 1 and that you know it, when in reality there's huge gaps in your knowledge you're not even aware of. So you might think you're good at cardiology, but actually there's huge things you don't even know that you're bad at. The reason I did so well in my A-level exams was because all the content that came up on the exam fit into either box 1 or box 2. Either I already knew it from lessons, or I knew exactly what I needed to learn, so I could just set about learning it, making sure I did enough repetitions and tested myself until I knew everything for the exam. In contrast to A-levels, medicine is plagued by content that fits into box 4, the unknown unknowns. And the first step of learning medicine, and a very important step, is trying to get as much information out of box 4 as possible into box 2 and box 1, so that you either know it or you know what to learn and you can set about learning it. When things are in box 4, that's when you do badly in exams. So if we can have a strategy to try and move stuff out of box 4, out of the unknown unknowns territory, then we're on the right path. So let's talk about how we move things between boxes. Firstly, let's start by talking about box 2, the known unknowns box. Most of the How to Learn Medicine content on this page and in the YouTube channel is focused on getting things from box 2 to box 1. This is content that you have that you're trying to get from the page to stick in your brain so that on the exam day, the information is right there at your fingertips and you can do well in your exams. So I won't go into too much detail about this, but it all focuses on the key concepts of spaced repetition, active reading, testing yourself, and tracking your learning. If you implement those 4 strategies, you'll do well at moving things from box 2 to box 1. Next, let's talk about box 3, which is the unknown knowns. And the main danger of having things that you know but you're not aware of is that you waste time going through that content again, when you should be spending that time and energy focusing on your weaknesses. So how do you move things from box 3 into box 1 so that you know and you're aware of the fact that you know them? Well, the key thing is testing yourself. Test yourself on MCQs and in other ways, and then track your learning so that you know exactly which areas you're strong in and which areas you're weak in. And I've got a whole video all about tracking, which you can find on the YouTube channel, and will explain this concept, so I won't go through it all over again. Finally, let's talk about how to tackle box 4, which is the unknown unknowns. And the way to tackle this is to try to get the information from the unknown unknowns into box 2, the known unknowns. And you can think of box 2 as your set of notes in preparation for your exams. It contains all the information you know you need to know, And so you can set about learning that information and moving it then into box 1. But first, you have to compile that set of notes, that information into one place so that you know what to learn. This looks a bit different to traditionally how people put together a set of notes. It's a much faster process of just getting everything together in one place, ready to learn. Traditionally, when people make a set of notes, they sit down and they copy or they retype information from textbooks or resources or online videos or lecture slides into their own notepad, whether that's a physical notepad or a digital notepad. And they might describe this as being the way that they learn. They learn by making a set of notes. And what they're kind of saying is that they think they're moving information from the unknown unknowns box straight into the known knowns box. So they think this process of making the notes is actually consolidating the information in their memory. In reality, the information is just being processed in the short-term memory, and then when you put it in your notepad, your brain is smart enough to realize the job of memorizing or keeping that information has been delegated to the notepad, so it doesn't have to stick in your long-term memory. It's just processed in your brain, in your short-term memory, and then discarded because it's being kept in a safe place in your notepad. So even though these students might think they're moving things from box 4 to box 1, really they're moving things from box 4 into box 2, but they're taking a very long time to do it because they're doing this wonderful process of creating a set of notes rather than just collecting them together. What I recommend is a much faster process of collecting notes together from various different places to put together as quickly as possible so that then you have your set of known unknowns and you can get to work actually learning that information. The note collecting process is not actually a learning process, it's just a gathering process to gather everything from the unknown unknowns into the known unknowns. I would suggest starting with a pre-existing set of notes. And this could come from another student or from somebody in the year above you. Sometimes they're handed out around your medical school. Or you could start with the Zero to Finals textbook, which was designed exactly to fill this purpose. And then congratulations, you have 80 or 90% of what you need to know for your exams sat in one place in box 2, a known unknown, so you know that you need to learn all of these content. And you can immediately get started putting into place spaced repetition, active reading, testing and tracking to move all that content from box 2 to box 1. Very quickly, you'll become familiar with the contents of your set of notes, and these are your known unknowns. And then when you're on your clinical placements or you're studying with your peers or you're doing practice questions or reading around the topic or attending lectures, you'll come across little bits of information that you realize are missing from your set of notes, from your known unknowns. And these little bits of information are the unknown unknowns. So what you can do is get a notepad or a piece of paper or even the Notes app on your phone, jot down what that information is, and then later on, when you've got some time, go back to your things that you've jotted down, do a bit of research, and add some bullet points and summaries into your set of notes so that you fill that gap and you take that information from the unknown unknowns, which you've established, into the known unknowns. And then it's in your revision material and you'll cover it for your exams. This process of jotting down key things that you realize are not contained within your set of notes and then adding those to your sets of notes allows you to identify unknown unknowns and turn them into known unknowns. And then through the process of revising that stuff in your notes, you then convert it into known knowns. And this way you tackle this problem. A final thing to note is that you can get carried away trying to make the most comprehensive set of notes and trying to avoid missing any little detail that you think may come up on the exam. The problem with this is if you spend all your time trying to collect together every bit of information you can, you'll just run out of time. You won't have enough time to actually learn that content. When I sat my final exams for medical school, the set of notes that I'd scrapped together were so full of holes. There was so little information. When I think back to it, there were so many huge gaps in my knowledge. And yet, because I learnt that information really well, I spent so much time taking things from box 2, the known unknowns, into box 1, the known knowns, I still managed to graduate with honours. So don't let the pursuit of perfection and the fear of missing little details get in the way of you preparing properly and getting good grades. So I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you did, and leave me a like or a comment. If there's any videos you want to see, please do let me know and I'll look at putting those together. Or any problems that you just struggle with in general, do let me know and I'll give it some thought and see if I can help. So I'll see you in the next video.